maybe the person who has been abused, or maybe they haven't, but they read stories like have been in the news this week about abuse in our church or abuse in other churches, and it breaks their hearts.
Yeah.
Because like we love our church, right?
Yeah.
And I think a fair number of those people have had to take a beat and say, wait a minute, like, is my church the bad guy?
Yeah.
Are we, like, do we have all these sophisticated mechanisms for hiding abuse like we're being accused of?
Yeah.
To let that slip into some doubting of the church, doubting of their faith, ultimately doubting of God. I mean, you can kind of see how that happens, right?
That's right.
And the people in our church are bright and care about issues and care about kids. So you hear this shocking news story. Of course, you're going to have some emotional reactions. Here's how I address that as a victim of sexual abuse. So what happened to me was terrible. It should have never happened. It was awful. It ruined my life in some ways. But if someone heard my story and said, that's the proof God doesn't exist, I'm giving up my faith, that would be a second and so unnecessary tragedy. This pastor who did this to me, like, I am the victim of that. You, person who reads about terrible abuse cases, don't volunteer yourself as victim because of their evil. Don't lose your faith that has been so important to you, that is meaningful to you, because some evil guy did something. He already has one victim. Yeah. Don't make it two, right? He's not going to sexually abuse you, but he could steal your faith. And you could let him just because you are so mad about the issue of abuse. Everybody's mad at the issue of abuse. It is hard, I get it, to read these stories and to try and be like, okay, God is still in control. The church is still good. We still actually do care about kids. We're not this awful secret organization that hides abusers as has been accused in the media. Don't let the abusers win. They do not get to win. They don't get to steal your faith. Don't let them.
Wow. What about you, for you personally, and like, how, assuming that it's come, or assuming that it's in the process, how has redemption come for you personally?
Yeah. I mean, because my experience of telling my story in public intersects so strongly with me joining the church, like, you can't tell one story without telling the other in some ways. It feels like that is such a spot of redemption, of not only did I get some of this stuff out of me in a good way, but I found a church where I don't have to think some real terrible things that are also just as awful. Like, for example, my dad died when I was 12. The church that I attended, like many Protestant churches, has the belief that if you did not say a certain prayer or have a certain kind of commitment to Christ, you are sent to hell for eternity, where you will suffer conscious torment forever, and there's nothing that can ever happen to change that. There's no possibility after you are dead, you are suffering in hell. And that's what they would say about my dad, right? Accepting that as a reality, the emotional weight of that feels as heavy to me personally, as somebody who's experienced it, as having gone through abuse, right? So to figure out there was a system where I didn't have to think things like that, like that made it so that my mind could kind of find healing along, like, with my spirit finding healing. There also is an element, it was very redemptive for me to be able to stand in front of court, say, this is what happened, and every adult there was taking it seriously. There was no, like, oh, don't ruin his life, honey, leave him alone, right? Like, having it taken seriously was really, really healing for me. Adults listening, if you know a person in your life who's either an adult or a child they've already confessed their abuse, it's already been dealt with, supporting them in a way that takes their story seriously, that's one of the most healing things that there is.
Wow. What do you believe now about God that's changed?
Oh, goodness.
That's changed your perspective.
In the churches I was in, and in a lot of the Protestant world, God's kind of mean. He sends people who were born in times and places that they had no opportunity to ever hear about him. Literally zero opportunity. He sends them to be tortured in hell for all of eternity. In the churches I was in, you are a child of God, but not really. Satan is really actually your father, and God will kindly adopt you into his family, but you're evil and wretched from birth. So there's a lot of changes in our church compared to my previous churches about the character of God, the trustworthiness of God. Can you trust a God who sends people to hell for no reason? That's hard to trust, right? And then you experience abuse in a church. Like, I was hanging on, but not always great. Sort of reconceptualize the character of God, that has been incredibly healing for me.
Tell me about what you believe about him, his character.
I am his child, his literal child. I have spent most of my life without a father. And my dad died way too young. I only knew him as a kid. I was more vulnerable to abuse because of that. My abuse didn't happen until after he died. I spent most of my life feeling like just the little fatherless girl, right? Out of luck. Yeah, God's my father, but only sort of, right? He actually thinks I'm evil and wicked. He's just real kind and lets me in, sort of. So to feel like I actually have a heavenly father and a bonus, a heavenly mother that no one else talks about either. I have parents in heaven who care about me, who know me, who are aware of my situation. That's a phrase Latter-day Saints say, like, he is aware of you. No one else uses that phrase, really, at least not that I know of. And the first time someone said that to me, it was like a lightning bolt of truth of like, oh, like he actually is aware of me. And you just don't get that in the same way other places.
Well, we've gone over a lot of things. Your story is really, really powerful.
Thank you.
I'm so thankful that you're able to be willing to come and share.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
It's not an easy thing to talk about. And again, we know that this is a very sensitive topic. But the biggest thing is, don't take our word for it.
Yep.
Find out for yourself.
Yep.
Till next time.